All right, welcome to the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast, the NBA edition. It is February 13th, day before Valentine's Day. We have All-Star break approaching, and we have a nice 11-game slate. On Monday, it is a fairly loaded one. We have a game in this Nuggets-Warriors that is very, very high total, opened at 239.5, which is, if you just look at our trends database, it is the highest total in the last 3 years in our database. So sort of a Coors Field-esque dynamic to this NBA slate. It's just this is so much higher than every other one. So we'll definitely get into that. We're going to go through our usual structure. We'll hit on injuries. We'll talk a couple games. Of course, the Warriors-Nuggets will be one of those. And then we'll run through positions quickly here. So let me introduce my co-hosts, Justin, Phan, and Jay Persson. Jay, how are you doing?
Good, man. Just ready to get this 11-game slate over with. And we got that big 14er on Wednesday. And then I really, really can't wait for this All-Star break. Definitely excited for that.
Yeah, just sleep a lot, relax for a couple days. Justin, what's going on, dude?
Yeah, looking forward to it as well. We spent about like an hour before this pod talking about the merits of this Plumlee-Nurkic deal. It's pretty interesting. Doesn't really make that much difference in the bigger picture, but we spent a lot of time on it. My question for the state is, how much Frank Kaminsky is too much Frank Kaminsky?
Yeah, Bryan, what do you think?
There's no such thing as too much Frank Kaminsky, I would say. He's worth 5 first-round picks in the draft, and he's worth 100% exposure in today's slate. All right, so let's dive right into things, fellas. I want to keep this rolling just because there's so much in this slate. Jay, can you run through notable injuries for us today? There's quite a bit, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot that's been coming on. That's kind of why we got a late start. They just kept coming in, but I'll start with some notable ones. Joel Embiid still out, small tear in his left meniscus. Joel Okafor basically out. He didn't travel. He's about to be traded. Cody Zeller out once again with that sore quad injury. Thaddeus Young doubtful with the sprained left wrist. Aaron Gordon went through shoot-around. He is expected to play. Dion Waiters will warm up with the intent to play, as the Heat like to say. Josh Richardson actually went through shoot-around. No official word on tonight yet. John Wall missed practice today and yesterday, but he said he'll play. It's more just kind of resting that sore foot. Jay Crowder returns after missing 2 games. Jaylen Brown has been ruled out through the All-Star break. Gerald Green, questionable with an illness. Darren Williams, questionable with an illness as well. Klay Thompson just got ruled out a little bit ago with a sore right heel. Sean Livingston as well, ruled out, had a baby or going to have a baby. Gallinari, Moutier, and Fareed are once again out. Darrell Arthur joins them as out. Wilson Chandler didn't go through shoot-around. He's questionable. That could have big implications tonight. And then Gary Harris, probable. Sore right hamstring. Mason Plumlee sticking with the Nuggets, still highly unlikely to play tonight, make his debut. Rodney Hood still out through the All-Star break. The Pelicans are on back-to-back. We haven't heard about Terrence Jones yet. Tyreek could rest on the second leg of back-to-back. Tyson Chandler, after missing last game, is probable. Sprained right ankle. Thabo Sefolosha got ruled out again. And Nurkic for the Blazers, unlikely to play as well. There's a lot.
Quite a bit, yeah. That's a lot of injuries. All right, so let's get into our games. We'll keep these short, but the 2 that I picked today is Warriors at the Nuggets, obviously because of this high total. I said it was sort of Coors Field-esque, which is a reference to baseball, and Coors Field just has such a higher total than every other game. So that's sort of what I mean by that. At 238.5, which is where it is now, it's almost 20 points higher than any other game. So obviously a game that we're going to want to target here. And then the next one we're going to talk about is it's going to be Blazers and the Hawks. And I really wanted to talk about this one just so we could really just touch quickly on the effects of the trade for the Blazers and what we expect that to do for their rotation. So let's start there. So obviously Mason Plumlee removed from the rotation. He has not missed a game this year, so we can't just do a really easy on-off query. But if we just take him off the court using our tool, we see that Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum get a pretty significant usage rate increase. So, Justin, I'm curious what your thoughts. Who do you think is going to start for Plumlee? But do you agree that sort of Dame and CJ are still the guys that we want to focus on here?
Yeah, I'm really interested in kind of the dynamic of losing Plumlee because he was such an integral part to their offense with the pick and roll. And Dame and CJ, Dame especially, really benefited from the screens he set and his passing ability. And they lose a lot of that playmaking ability with whoever they're going to try out now, with Ed Davis, with Myers Leonard, Vonleh, and eventually Nurkic. And it's just not going to be the same. So, I do think there is going to be a bit of a bump here, but an adjustment period as well, where we talk about the usage bunch with Lillard and McCollum, but I do think there's going to be just a general efficiency hit as well. Just that offense just won't be as good as it's been. I think Dame is still, really nice today, at home against Atlanta. He's 8,600 on FanDuel. He's out of everybody, out of any site, I think he's probably the top play from this game. And that's kind of where I'm looking at. You look at Steph and Dame Lillard as kind of the top elite point guards that I'm kind of eyeing on FanDuel right now. CJ is interesting. I'm curious about where your guys' takes on him. I think he's decent priced, 7,700 on FanDuel as well. Is he kind of more of a cash game play or a tournament play for you guys?
Yeah, I think for me, he's in that cash game mix. I like him quite a bit. Now that Tabo's ruled out, who's the Hawks' best perimeter defender. In the last 10 games, they rank 30th in defensive efficiency against opposing shooting guards. So I like him quite a bit. And then Plumlee out gives him a nice little boost. And I think as far as Plumlee out in terms of scoring and how they score, I think it hurts Dame more, like you mentioned. 60 of Dame's field goal makes this season have been assisted by Plumlee, which is almost double the next player. CJ McCollum is second with 34. So he was huge for Dame. And I think, Dame echoed that when he said he's going to miss Plum and is one of his favorite teammates at any level he's ever had. So I think at his price and still with a generous matchup, I still like Dame quite a bit, but there is a little bit of hesitancy there. And I don't really have that with McCollum too much. So I like both those guys. And the front court, we have Ed Davis, min price, I believe. On DK, just 3K. Is that something you guys are fine with going there? Safe salary?
It's a tough spot versus Dwight, and he's a rebounding big. I don't love this spot for Ed Davis. I think there are kind of better spots to pick. I think the biggest beneficiary, really, the guy I'm looking at here is Aminu. I think he's going to benefit quite a bit from this and just see kind of extended minutes at that 4. Maybe they'll have to slide Vonleh over, play some 5 potentially. But Aminu, I think, is pretty nice. That's the next guy I'm eyeing at 5,500 on FanDuel. What are your thoughts on this front court, Bryan?
Yeah, well, I don't think you can play really any of them in cash. I think Aminu is probably the safest of them, but just because we're expecting Ed to probably start alongside Vonleh, but I don't think that any of them are going to play high minutes. Like, you're going to see a steady rotation of, Ed maybe 25 minutes, Myers Leonard, like pretty solid minutes. But like, none of these guys are going to get 30-plus minutes. In sort of a tough matchup against Dwight and Millsap. I don't think that they hold enough safety. And honestly, Ed could play 10 minutes and they could just go heavy Myers or heavy, and slide over Vonleh or play smaller with Aminu. So there's just too much volatility here that I think that McCollum and Dame are both cash, but that's sort of it for me.
Yeah, I think Davis is fine taking some tournament shots at min on DK. I think they're going to play matchups. And Stotts has done this in the past, regardless of this spot where he plays matchups with his bigs, no matter what. We've seen Ed Davis and Myers Leonard alternate playing time, where one plays one game, then other plays the next game. I do think this profile is more of an Ed Davis game with Dwight and Millsap in there, kind of more traditional big front court. I think they'll kind of gravitate towards him. So I can see some tournament shares of Ed Davis here. Moving on to the Atlanta side here. And any interest? I think it's kind of thin here. I don't want to get too deep into it. Dwight Howard, Paul Millsap, Schroeder, Tim Hardaway Jr. Been really great without Tabo. What are our levels of interest in those guys here in this spot?
Yeah, those are the 4 I'm looking at for sure. I like Schroeder a lot because his minutes have crept back up. We mentioned on the last pod how his recency bias was against him, and that was due to a lot of blowouts. So we've kind of seen his minutes climb back up to normal. It's a great spot against Portland. I really like this game as far as tournament play goes and kind of stacking a lot of these plays here. So I think he's firmly in the mix, kind of one of my favorite tournament plays. Hardaway averaged 27 DK points in 10 games without Tabo, 31 minutes. So, I mean, he's safe. I just don't know if you're going to have the need to kind of go him. He does have a pretty elevated price point compared to where he once was.
Yeah.
And then Dwight, I mean, Dwight's the intriguing guy to me because he's been just really disappointing since that Rockets game where he went off. But they have been in blowouts too. And, I think this is a pretty great spot where he can take advantage of Plumlee out and no Nurk. So who do you like between like Dwight and Millsap?
I think that point is great with a per minute basis with Dwight. I just don't see, even in some of these non-blowout games, he just hasn't been playing a ton of minutes. Yeah. So that's why I prefer Millsap, just because I think he has legit 5, 6, 7 minute plus upside over Dwight, where best case I can see Millsap playing 37, 38 minutes. Mm-hmm. And, I think that it gives him immense upside in this spot. But I totally agree. Like, this is a game you want to stack in tournaments for sure. Yeah. Just kind of, especially with this Hawk side. I think it's pretty obvious that people are going to like Dame and CJ. Yeah. I don't think as many people are going to quite be on Schroeder or Millsap or even Dwight. I think those are kind of sneaky spots.
Yeah, it really is going to be sneaky, and especially with like the Denver Golden State game, like people are going to take Jokic and
Draymond Green in the front court.
Green, yeah. So like you're not going to go Millsap over either of those guys probably just because of that high total. So Millsap and I honestly don't mind Dwight. Like if he's going to be like 2 or 3% owned, which he might be, there's some intrigue there. Like if he does get up to 35 minutes, I don't think you have to go overboard with exposure, but I think a lot of these guys have shown that they have high ceilings. And if, Dwight is running into a rotation of Myers Leonard and Noah Vonleh potentially at some center, like Dwight could dominate that. So all right, let's move. Go ahead.
No, I like Dwight's upside a lot. Tournament shares for sure.
Well, we'll talk about center in a little bit. I'm curious how you guys compare Dwight to big upside guys like Hassan Whiteside or Drummond today. Like there's some good tournament options too that you can look at as well that have really good upside as well. All right, let's move on to this next game, the juicy game where all the action is.
Yeah, the juicy game. So again, this opened at 239. This is Golden State against Denver. Opened at 239. Went down. It's back up. So I just checked it right now. But so it's at 239.5, which is obviously it's about 20 points higher than any other game. There's a lot of value in this game. Just because of the high total, but also because of the injuries, as Jay mentioned. Pretty much all of the Nuggets, I think, are injured. And we do have the Wilson Chandler one that's sort of hanging over our heads that will definitely affect things. But also on the Warriors side, Clay being out sort of really affects the slate. So all of a sudden you have this really high total game that's almost 240 points, and you also have a lot of guys who are really cheap. So it's sort of like I don't know, like you could really just stack all guys from this team and probably be fairly decent in cash games. So Jay, I'll kick to you first. What are what are the fallouts of, I'll let you, since these are your two teams, you're a Denver guy and Justin's a Golden State guy. I'll let you talk about Denver. What's the fallouts from all these injuries? Like you're going to have a guy like Juan Hernan-Gomez get the start, but like who are the good values here, you think?
I mean, it's tough. It's always tough with the Warriors because they're so much better than the Nuggets and their defense is so much better. And I mean, I could see this game turning into a blowout still, even with Clay out. But with all these injuries to the Nuggets, I mean, Wilson Chandler is going to be big because if he's out, that just like wipes them out, basically, that starting unit. And it's just all going to shift to a few guys. So I still have a lot of interest in Will Barton. He's shown, he can put up these big lines. I think the minutes last game aren't really reflective of his role, especially with all these guys out now. I mean, I think Darrell Arthur out's pretty big because Wilson's going to have to play a lot of the 4. Juancho, I mean, like if you're comparing like Juancho to Ed Davis and kind of the positional scarcity of each position and who you have, like that's a tough decision, I think, on some of these punts we have with injuries opening up that I don't feel comfortable with Juancho. too much, and that's kind of just assuming he gets the start, which I think he will. But Jameer's the guy who's really been benefiting a lot with Moutier out, and I'm not a believer. I think that's ticking, like that's running low. But I mean, he's got 2 huge games in a row. They're thin again, so Jameer, his price point last game was really cheap on DK, and now it's gone up, I think, all the way to 54. So like personally, it's Jameer Nelson, and he's playing the best team in the league. I'm not too high on him, but I think he'll still carry pretty high ownership. He was like 35%, I think, last game. So
and he is still 5K on FanDuel, so he's right there. If Wilson is out, Wilson Chandler's out, would you be really worried about the blowout?
So here's the thing, though. I think speaking to that, they have 10 players available right now, and if Wilson's out, they have 9. And 2 of those players are Mike Miller and Johnny O'Brien. So, unless you see Mike Miller, I like J.O.B., but, unless you see the corpse of Mike Miller playing, 20-plus minutes, these guys are going to be force-fed minutes no matter what. Even if they're down 20 or so, they're going to have to play just because they don't have enough bodies. So it's I think that's that aspect that they're so short on bodies gives me a little bit of security, even with this looming blowout possibly.
Yeah. I mean, if Wilson's out, that'll give me a lot more,
Gary
feel
Harris.
A lot better with, and Wancho too, even just that kind of
if
mid-price
he's out,
punt play.
Yeah.
If Wilson's out, it sounds like it's not great. I mean, he missed shoot around and he got downgraded to questionable. So there's a chance he plays, but it's just far from 100% too. So that's another thing to take into consideration. Just because he plays and they're still kind of thin, I don't know how much Wilson Chandler I want if he's really sick and got downgraded.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I mean, I do think for tournaments, the game we just talked about before, I like more than this one because that game can be really competitive and close all the way through.
And it's also going to have much lower ownership.
Right. And the ownership of this, I mean, with Clay out, it's, Steph, KD, lots of Draymond still. So
Jokic obviously on the other side.
Jokic, right.
Yeah. All right, Justin, let's switch over to the Golden State side. So Clay being out is obviously the big news here. Who's going to step up? Who do you think would start for him? Because Livingston is usually a guy that would fill in a lot of minutes and play alongside Steph. But with him out as well, is it going to be a lot of Iggy, you think?
Yeah, I love Iguodala in this spot. I think this is a really good – I mean, I like 5-6 cash game players on this team. I can make an argument for 6 of them. I think the first guy you obviously look at the top overall play of his slate is Steph Curry. The Nuggets have the highest opposing plus minus to point guards this season, the second highest upside at 7%, and the highest consistency at 75%. So you get that consistency, that floor, that upside as well. I think this is just a can't miss spot for Steph. I think you have to lock him in on both sides. KD definitely really strong as well. It's going to be kind of hard to kind of afford a lot of these guys. He's obviously really nice, but still obviously expensive. 10-1 on FanDuel, and even more. He's 9-9 on DK. It's gonna be tough to really fit him in, but he's obviously incredibly nice as well. I think if you're looking at value, 2 guys I like a lot from this game, double revenge game factor, JaVale McGee and Andre Iguodala. JaVale's been great as of late. He's been playing really well. This is a perfect game for him, just up tempo where he can run the floor, get all these alley-oops, really benefit from these fast breaks. I like JaVale a lot on FanDuel at 36. That's a good price for me. I'm in on JaVale because he's been had some tough matchups lately, man. He's played OKC put up 19.6 FanDuel points. Yeah. I mean, I like JaVale in the spot, and Iguodala is just kind of a safe play because he's probably going to see 30 minutes in this game. This game kind of sets up well where steals are going to be really abundant with this Nuggets offense, and being sloppy, and Iguodala is just a really safe floor play. I like him as well. And then we haven't mentioned Draymond, and Draymond. This is maybe another triple double spot for him too. I think I don't even know if I can fit Draymond in today, but he is extremely nice. Kind of the extension of a lot of these arguments too. The steal potential there is massive. A lot of rebounds in this game with the amount of shots taken. I mean, there's a lot of stats in this one to be had, and it's just kind of managing which kind of pieces you're going to take and which kind of fit in your salary cap.
Yeah. Jay, what are your thoughts on some of these Warriors guys? I don't mind the like the JaVale call, but it's really going to be tough. So I think Steph was probably like the best overall play before the Clay news. So with the Clay news, especially with Livingston out as well, like I don't know how you don't play Steph. Like you just have to cash games.
Yeah, 9,400 on FanDuel. I mean, I think JaVale's fine too at his price. It's kind of just going to come down to, is that where you want to save and kind of forfeit some of these other centers? But I don't know if the revenge factor will be there for JaVale, because I don't know. I don't know how JaVale works. He might have a grudge maybe, but I don't think it'll do much. But they're like legit. I mean, like 8 cash plays from this game, really? That you could argue
maybe,
I mean, like actual strong cash flow. I mean, Wilson Chandler's not too expensive. He's 6,700 on DK. So I mean, like now you have Wancho, like all these guys. Jokic, obviously. I mean, Jokic on
DK is extremely nice, obviously at 9,200, and you look at they're decimating that front court. Basically, but you're talking about true big men. It's like Jokic and JOB. That's it.
Right.
And Jokic's going to have to play big minutes, and we know what he does with big minutes.
Yeah. I mean, so last time these teams played, Jokic went for 21, 13, and 5 in just 25 minutes. Jokic is one of the top plays, I think, overall. I mean, you basically just load up on this game. I think the points are going to be there.
Yeah. Like seriously, like if you I locked in Steph and like Hernan Gomez. Like if you lock those in and use like an optimizer in our models, like you're going to get all like almost all of these guys from this game, and like it's just because it's like a 240 total. Like that just never happens, and a lot of these guys total, are cheap.
240 total with injuries. It's
and
really
no back to back for either team. Like it's pretty perfect. And
So I want to touch on the situation before we move on. I think people are going to I think I'm going to expect McCaw to get the start at shooting guard in place of Clay, but I think that's really trapped. McCaw has been just horrific this season, 0.52 FanDuel points per minute. I think if you want to get cute and get a piece of this backcourt, it's through Ian Clark. I think I'd rather take a shot on him. He's been much more productive on a permanent basis and should see pretty nice run as well off the bench, without Sean Livingston too. So I'd probably stay away from McGod in the spot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Draymond, just to go back to him, in the 2 games they played this year already, he smashed both. This game sets up really well for him, just kind of the dynamics of it, for him to rack up those blocks and steals, and get another triple-double with 4 points or whatever. But he's got a plus 8.2 plus minus in the 2 games versus the Nuggets this year. And then I also want to say, I mean, Iggy, I think for me, I think he makes sense as a cash play in theory, but I don't know if his ownership will be up there at all, really. So I kind of like him.
Especially if he doesn't get the start. Like
he won't get the start.
But people like that's so important to a lot of players.
Right. So I like him in a decent amount of turning exposure, just knowing kind of that he has a good chance to pay off his price and exceed value with his increased role with Livingston out.
Yeah. That's very fair. All right, let's move on to positional breakdowns here. We'll start with point guard, move through center. Starting with the point guard spot, I think probably 3 of the best, probably maybe the 3 best plays of the slate, and Steph, Lillard, and Jameer, just from a value perspective, we've already discussed. So, remember those when we discuss these, but we'll move on to other guys that are intriguing. The 2 guys that are standing out to me are Westbrook and Holiday. Westbrook obviously is going to be interesting because we've talked about how his ownership never really dips, like sort of no matter what the slight dynamics are. So
it might dip today.
It might, but that's the question. Like with
really Steph
and Dame, will it dip? And then Drew against Phoenix. Drew has just been smashing that. You could say he's been one of the most valuable point guards over the last month or so. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on, like, if you're not going to go one of these 3 guys, like, I think we, like Steph and Jameer and Dame, like, those are cash game options that we really like. So, if you're going to take some shots in tournaments, we can make this sort of more tournament focused than cash game focused because we have those guys. Who are you looking for with high ceilings that you would be interested in?
I mean, I'm on Team Drew, big time. I've been cashing him a lot the last week, pretty much every single night on DK. His price went up, but he's been low owner. People are just sleeping on him still. His minutes are huge. He has a plus 10.43 plus minus in his last 10 games. On FanDuel today, he's only 8,300. So I like him as a tournament spot there, especially kind of just going down from Steph, who will be really high owned. Save 1,100 there and go Drew, or pair them both together. But he's kind of one of the guys I'm starting with. And then I think if the more that Steph is becoming higher owned now with Clay out, if that comes at Russ's expense, then I'm ready to go a lot of Russ on this slate as well. If you're kind of just on the side of fading that game maybe and being totally contrarian, we've seen Russ 3 games in a row over 60, went 35, 14, and 11 against the Suns last time. In an overtime game. So, or against, who are they? They're not playing the Suns, are they? Yeah,
the Wizards.
Wizards, yeah. The last game against Wall, they went to overtime. And on the other side, Wall, we got John Wall at home again. So those kind of 3 guys, Russ, Wall, and Drew are where I'm looking at tournaments.
Yeah, Justin, what about you? Because, we have our value guys, we have our safe guys. So now we're just sort of looking for high ceiling with low ownership. Any other guys stand out to you?
Yeah, I think those are kind of the obvious ones. 2 other guys that I'll mention are Malcolm Brogdon with this kind of decimated Bucks side. He's been playing pretty big minutes at the expense of Dellavedova. I could definitely see some 32 plus minute upside in this one. He's been playing big lately. And Kemba Walker at home against the Sixers defense without Joel Embiid, that's been just hemorrhaging points, I think is interesting as well. Obviously the trio of Drew, Russ, and Wall take precedence, but Kemba and Brogdon are interesting. Georgie's more of a cash game play for me, and obviously you're not cashing him in this, with the other options out there. Kind of getting beyond that, you got Mike Conley in this plus matchup against Brooklyn. I think that's really intriguing too. That spread is 9, which is close enough where you can definitely take some shots. Hope it stays close. And then we mentioned Schroeder too. It's just a matter of whether this game stays close and he's able to see 32 minutes like he does when it doesn't get out of hand. So I think that's kind of it for me. I'm completely off Reggie Jackson. He's getting outplayed by Ish Smith as of late. Maybe a change is coming there eventually. I'm off Reggie. Eric Bledsoe, kind of interesting too against New Orleans. Any other guys kind of stand out for you at this position?
Yeah, I mean, the guys that I'm going to be looking at are the ones that are sort of in the same price range as the chalky guys, but with some upside. So Bledsoe is a guy that really stands out to me. He rested on Saturday, so he hasn't played in quite a few games or quite a few days here, going against a Pelicans team that has really hemorrhaged points and value to point guard. So him getting 4-day rest playing against a Pelicans team that just played yesterday on a back-to-back, I do think is pretty intriguing. And then if you really want to get really sort of off the wall, like a guy like TJ McConnell is like right above Jameer. So like if you just want to take a chance on McConnell over just like a challenge, like just that he could outperform Jameer, he's going to be essentially he's not going to have any ownership, especially Jameer in this high total game. So it's not the optimal play, but like guys in the same price range that have equally high ceilings that are going to be low owners, sort of where I'm going with. So I think that's sort of the way to do it in tournaments here.
Yeah, young Nash coming through with those game winners.
Yeah, so Nash has been nice. 26.5 DK points in 6 games without John and Embiid. I got to ask you, Bryan, as the resident Hornets fan, what's up with Kemba lately? I mean, it's been bad, and he's been bad in 2 games versus the Sixers already this season too.
I don't know, man. Yeah, it's tough. It's his shot, but I don't know what's wrong with it. Like he just hasn't missed shots, and like maybe it's just a slump, and he'll come out of it. Like I haven't seen anything that like looks like he's injured or his form looks off, so it might just be a slump. But yeah, I mean, like he hit, he was 4 of 18 last game. That's not good.
Give me Bledsoe in tournaments over him. I think coming off that rest game, I'm definitely intrigued. A lot of Bledsoe and Drew for me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on to shooting guard. We'll just keep on going through.
Let me mention one more guy before we didn't talk about him in the game breakdown. Jamal Murray. I think you need to keep an eye on him if Wilson Chandler is out. I like the upside quite a bit if Jamal Murray, if they get a little shorthanded. I think he can do some really nice things off the bench there. Yeah, real nice tournament play.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Moving on to shooting guard, and I will say, it's a big 11-game slate, so there's probably going to be a lot of guys we don't mention. That's what models are for. So definitely go in and check those out and find place. But we're just touching on a couple guys that we think are intriguing, for tournaments and for cash games. So moving on to shooting guard, we've hit on really a lot of these guys. At the top we have the Denver guys in Harris and Barton. We have CJ McCollum, who I think is a really strong cash play, and even Tim Hardaway, who's a little pricier, but it's sort of right there. Like, these are the games that we've discussed, and they sort of are where the shooting guard value is. Justin, I'll kick to you to start on this one. I mean, again, this is sort of like we already have our cash game play, so let's find some upside. Like, I really love a guy like Wes Matthews today, but like, where are you looking for upside as in like the shooting guard spot here?
Yeah, it's tough. You can. I think you can dip back to maybe look at Buddy Hield a little bit. Coming off that suspension, maybe he exited early. He was looking pretty good up until then against his Sun side. I think that's pretty interesting to me. Devin Booker, I think you can go to that too against this Pelican side. Kind of going back to that game too, and it's Fournier's in a tougher spot, especially if Waiters plays. Waiters has actually been a pretty good defender this season, but Fournier has been seeing pretty massive minutes in some of these games, like upwards of 38 to 40. So, what are you guys' thoughts on Fournier? I'm curious.
Yeah, I like the price at 5,400 on FanDuel, but the inconsistency definitely worries me if I'm trying to save that position in cash. But yeah, I think the tournament upside's there. I think. He's 400 less than Barton, who I think is pretty clearly the chalk on FanDuel, one of the two. So I don't mind that pivot. But a tournament guy I'm really intrigued by, who I'll likely have a lot at low ownership, is Nicholas Batum. Who's been playing really well lately at the expense of Kemba, who's been playing bad. So I think if people kind of gravitate towards Kemba at home in this spot, I'm looking to get a lot of exposure to Batum, who has as high a ceiling as a lot of these other shooting guards, especially.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a really nice pivot away from McCollum. Like, he's 300 more on FanDuel, and I really think that this is what you have to do in the slate is find the chalk, because I think the chalk is going to be more chalky than usual today, just because of the value. So getting away from McCollum, whether it's 300 up or just a little bit down to like a guy like Devin Booker, I think is intriguing. Has struggled a little bit. Struggled in this particular game, but I think has a lot of upside against Buddy Hield, who's not a particularly good defender. Giannis is going to be like incredibly low owned. I don't think we like his spot against Detroit, but I mean, like if you're just looking for really low owned guys with massive upsides, I still like Wes Matthews. I have no problem cashing him if you sort of want to stay away from Barton. If you get worried about the blowout factor, I'm okay with that pivot. He's been really good. Any other guys that we're looking at here?
I think Tony Allen's kind of interesting at his price, just with this game against Brooklyn and the potential for a lot of steals in this one. I think he's reasonably priced 4,900 on FanDuel, and let's see, on DK he's 46. So he's kind of popping on the models a little bit. I think just points per dollar, he's pretty nice. I've looked at this Charlotte total, and it's pretty high against a Sixers team, and a lot of these guys have kind of struggled. I think you can maybe take a shot at Bellinelli into tournaments. His usage has been really nice these last couple of games. He has 27 field goal attempts in about 24 minutes per game over the last two games. He's been taking a lot of shots. Jeremy Lamb has been taking a lot of shots for that second unit too. I think those guys are decent on DK at their prices. Any interest in Seth Curry at 47 on DK?
Not a lot.
Not too much. I'm on the West side for sure right now. I like West quite a bit. One guy we haven't mentioned too that I think warrants tournament exposure is Devin Booker, as usual, and that's kind of another game that I definitely like stacking along with that Portland-Atlanta game. getting a lot of exposure to the key guys in that game. And just kind of like Bryan's been saying over and over, just kind of fading that Warriors game where kind of all the chalk will be. So I like Booker quite a bit. And then I guess the only other guy I'm looking at, what do you guys think about KCP?
Yeah, he's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's gonna go for like I don't know. He's gotten back to like fairly consistent games, and like he's been playing massive minutes. So like in the slate, you probably don't need to go him, but I mean he did put up a high ceiling game like a week ago. So
ceiling's there.
Yeah, ceiling's there. Let's move on to small forward, and I think we probably talk actually a little bit of a cash game here, just because I don't think it's quite as clear. We have KD sort of at the top. He's probably the best value despite being the highest priced guy because of this high total game. But then, Jay, I'll let you start on this one. Like, where are we looking for a cash game option? Like, is Iggy at, especially at his price point? He's at 4.4 on FanDuel. He is 3.9 on DK. Like, DK, it seems like Iggy is probably fine, but if we have to go two small forwards on FanDuel, where are you looking?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think a lot of it's going to come down to in cash games how comfortable you are with Wilson Chandler exposure, if that's kind of a guy you want, and getting a piece of that game if he's fully healthy. And it doesn't appear that way right now, so I kind of want to pivot off that. I think Iggy's fine, personally. I really do. I think the minutes will be there. The matchup is obviously fantastic. I don't think he'll really carry that high ownership either that some people look for in cash games, but I don't mind it at all. But yeah, that second small forward is definitely going to be pretty tough. I know, Bryan, you're going to cash Andre Robertson, but I don't think I can do that. A guy that I think might get slept on a little is Robert Covington.
Yeah.
He's averaged 40 DK points in 4 games without John and Embiid. And I believe he's cheaper on DK, I think. 6,400 on FanDuel. But so, I don't think it's cheap, but as a tournament play who might be kind of overlooked, kind of benefiting off Embiid and Ja being out, going outside of Nerlens, of course, I think Covington's pretty nice there.
Yeah, he's a great pivot from Wilson. Right. Even if Wilson does suit up, just because that same price point. Any other guys stand out to you, Justin? I mean, like TJ Warren, we sort of discussed him off the pod, and then you get to like some like really pivots down from Kevin Durant, like a guy like Kawhi who's crushing lately, but obviously him and PG go against each other.
Yeah, it's tough for Wilson's. I don't know what to do with Wilson, honestly, because like he had the illness last game against Cleveland, I believe, and he busted big time. He played 34 minutes, only put up 18.7 FanDuel points. So it's like, I mean, obviously he gets a nicer draw here with the higher total, more decimated team, so he should be able to do better. But there's definitely some downside concern there with Chandler with that illness. I think. Iguodala is kind of it for me. DraftKings especially, you kind of lock him at 3,900, just way too cheap there. I don't know. Who else? Gordon Hayward been really great as of late. He'll draw some Ba Mute, which is not ideal. But Ba Mute is not playing heavy minutes as of late anyway, so it's not like he's going to be seeing too much of him. And Hayward's still affordable at 7,700 on DK. I think that's still a decent price. Who else are we looking at here, guys?
I mean, I think
all four is just tough today.
More than anything, it just shows you need to cram KD in there. Just get Durant exposure against Nuggets. That team total, Clay out. Like, don't overthink it too much. And this is a spot where you can spend up. And that's the route I'm definitely going. Probably on both sides. I think on DKs, if you can go him at small forward and then Iggy in your forward spot, for example, that's something I could do. I mean, you also have Will Barton, who's small forward eligible there. That's another option at small forward. But yeah, once again, I think I'm keeping my core of small forwards, my options in cash games pretty tight as usual, because it gets pretty bad and thin the more you kind of go down.
Yep, it does. Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. Especially at small forward. Yeah, go ahead.
Kawhi is really interesting because he's cheap. He's been crushing. I mean, he's clearly still underpriced on DK, 89. But the worry for me is the second leg of a back-to-back, and kind of similar to Wilson Chandler being ill, downgraded to questionable. It's along the lines of, do I want to risk a game where I'm paying for Kawhi, maybe even at the expense of KD, and then having Kawhi either rest or just go 28 minutes like we've seen in the past.
Yeah. I mean, in tournaments, maybe. For sure. Yeah. But yeah, it does get tough. Yeah, that's a good point. Robertson for sure. Jay loves Robertson.
No way.
All right, let's go to power forward. We've talked about a lot of these guys that are interesting with Jokic and Draymond, and we even talked about some of the value and even sort of fringy guys, and like Hernan Gomez and even Aminu on the Portland side. Millsap, obviously, I think is intriguing for tournaments as we discussed that game, but I guess you got to go Frank the Tank in cash games. I mean, Justin, do you think is he like Steph a must play?
Not a must play, but a strong play. I think obviously we talked about the Sixers defense without Embiid. It's just been really bad, and Frank's been playing massive minutes without Cody Zeller. I mean, I can easily see him playing. I have him at 33-7 right now, but I can easily see him playing 35-36 in this one. And we saw him. He's beaten a couple good matchups. He beat that Gobert matchup, gave him all sorts of fits, stretching the floor, and I mean, he's 4,800. It's just way too cheap given the amount of minutes he's going to see. And, he's a guy who's probably going to see about a 20% usage in this game. I mentioned that team total for Charlotte being pretty high. And, yeah, this is just a really good spot for Frank. And I don't think you really have to overthink it at that price. Just kind of lock him in on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm down with Frank. But I'm more so down with Nerlens Noel on both sides in cash. I think that's kind of where I'm starting.
So you prefer him over? So yeah,
I do. Yeah.
So like one Frank and Nerlens, you would go.
I'd go Nerlens,
Frank, and then one.
Yeah.
Well, the problem definitely is Nerlens over on DK, but you play both of them on FanDuel.
Yeah. So the tough part is that.
But then you want to get Draymond.
You have like Draymond, Anthony Davis, Jokic. So it's pretty tough.
But the thing is, like, you want to play Durant and you want to play Steph, right?
Right.
You're not be able to afford Draymond. So
that's interesting. All right. So let's go across positions here. So like Jokic or Durant.
Yeah, Jokic on DK. Durant on FanDuel.
The thing is, it's like the positional scarcity. Yeah. So like Durant, you'd go because you have Nerlens and Frank, and like you have competent guys. Even Ilyasova. I mean, you have plenty of guys power forward that I trust more than small forward. So in that regard, I'd lean Durant, but I mean, I love Jokic a lot. So, I mean, maybe, if you do cash games and you go KD and then don't go Jokic, then load up on Jokic in tournaments and kind of get your exposure there. I think that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. Let's keep on going on power forward real quickly. I mean, who is pivots away from those guys? I mean, where are we looking? We've talked about Millsap, and so the guy that sort of, I don't know, like you get sort of down into the range of like Markieff Morris, James Johnson, Serge Ibaka, which I think are intriguing plays, but like it's power forward is just oddly loaded. Justin, like if you're looking for high ceiling guys away from those guys, like Blake is probably in a too tough of a matchup against Utah to have high exposure, but is it like the James Johnson, Serge Ibaka types that you might go as pivots?
Yeah, I like James Johnson. We mentioned Millsap. I like him. Draymond. Anthony Davis, great spot against Phoenix. Yeah. I mean, I'm barely even talking about him. That's another guy who's going to go, criminally under Owen today. Especially with Frank and Nerlens kind of headlining this power forward position on FanDuel. I think Anthony Davis is kind of, I don't know, he's probably one of my top tournament players just because of that fact. He's probably going to go overlooked with all this value, all these studs in these high total games.
Yeah, I love Brow today, especially when you're kind of spending up that position. And I mean, it's like a direct pivot to the Golden State game, and if you don't go Steph, you don't go KD, then you have the salary cap to go guys like Brow and Jokic, and I think that's kind of what you want to look for in tournaments. So Brow makes sense. I think it's hitting pretty easily number one in terms of kind of tournament and upside, and then I'm pretty high on Millsap as well. Just kind of get away from these cheap guys. This is a spot where you want to spend up a little bit. Millsap's obviously in a great spot tonight.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's keep on moving to center, and we'll finish this up. So starting with the center, we've talked about like Dwight as a tournament pivot from guys. We've talked about like the merits of JaVale, and like there are definitely quite a few of them at his low like min price in this game. But I don't think we've sort of identified maybe like a surefire cash play. Justin, like on FanDuel, like who's standing out to you? Like, I know we've talked about JaVale, but like his minutes are a little thin. So, I mean, where are you looking in cash games for a center right now?
I mean, it's tough, man. I think a lot of these guys are tournament plays for me. That's why I'm kind of pushing JaVale, because I can make downside arguments for pretty much all these other guys. You look at I like Vucevic's matchup. He's been playing nice minutes against Whiteside, who's been pretty soft against centers this season. Opponent plus minus of plus 3.6. He's nice, but I'm not that confident about cashing Vucevic. Dwight Howard, great matchup against Portland front court without Mason Plumlee. Not seeing enough minutes. I'm not sure I'm going to cash him. And you get to guys like Whiteside, Drummond, Gortat. Gortat I like a lot more on DK. I think he's really strong there. But on FanDuel, it's tough for me to kind of settle on someone. Marcus Gasol's got a great matchup against Brooklyn, but they're pretty they're filling up in that front court where he doesn't have to play big minutes, especially in this spot. So that kind of caps his upside a little bit. I like Gobert, but I'm curious where you guys. I haven't really settled on one cash game guy on FanDuel yet. Where are you guys looking?
I mean, for me, I think Dwight at 68 kind of leads the pack. If he can't pay off that salary against Portland without Plumlee, then I'm willing to burn with that ship. Like I'm totally fine going down like that, and I think you can still fit the guys you want. Going cheap at power forward, going cheap at shooting guard, maybe going Iggy as your small forward too, and you can still comfortably get Steph and KD. So Dwight makes the most sense for me. I like these other guys too, but I mean they do kind of all have risk there, and I don't think I'm willing to go. It's really tough for me to kind of take a punt center. So for JaVale, if he gets like 19 or whatever, that's fine for his price, but it might not be enough if some of these other centers have big games. Like if Dwight is the highest owned center and he does have that big game, you're kind of screwed there. So yeah. I think I'm leaning Dwight in cash, but I agree that center's pretty tough narrowing it down.
It is. And DraftKings is like its own, like we can't even analyze these as the same position just because of how, you got
Nerlens over there, you got Draymond over there.
Yeah, and a guy like Jokic is center only on DraftKings, but he's power forward only eligible on FanDuel. Yeah. So you have that dynamic where I think Jokic is a great cash game play if you want to afford him. The problem is that you probably have to come down from someone. You could probably get him and Steph, but it's going to be tough. And then you have a guy like Gortat who's still just way, way too cheap on DraftKings for like the millionth time in a row. And then Nerlens. So, I mean, on DKJ, are you looking Nerlens? Is that sort of the value guy?
I mean, I'm obviously going him, but yeah, it's kind of depending on what position. I think you could realistically go into a Wancho at power forward if Wilson is ruled out, or if we know he's kind of limited. That's a punt that's in play there, I think. And then, I mean, we can cycle it back to Ed Davis at min price, who's center eligible on DK, and that's potentially your punt. If you go Ed Davis and Nerlens at the 4, power forward position, then you kind of have some money to play with. So those are all options. I mean, I think center, you're right. It's like completely different dynamics, site to site. I think on FanDuel, I'm leaning Dwight just because I feel comfortable enough with him in that matchup at that price. But DK, it's really about roster construction, and it's been like this a lot lately, especially with these multi-eligible guys, where to plug them in. And I think a lot of people overlook this aspect on DK, and that's why I think a lot of people struggle there is they're not putting these guys in the right places.
For sure. All right, so let's quickly touch on some guys that pivots on DK. So, we have like Draymond's at 7-8, which is obviously a good play. But you have a guy like Marcus Gasol who's 7-6 against Brooklyn. I mean, we've talked about some of these guys, but who are your favorite pivots for tournaments on DK, Justin?
Let me take a look here. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same guys you mentioned, I don't think – I mean, the same guy, Drummond, Whiteside. I think Gobert is nice. It's kind of that group where they're all like really strong tournament plays, but not cashing plays. It's like the same guys we're looking at on FanDuel. Like, I don't think I can cash this guy. Like Vucevic, I think is in there. Who did we talk about before that we wanted to mention within this group? Dwight Howard, right? Yeah. Just kind of how you think he stacks up against. Let's talk about Drummond and Whiteside, both those guys. I mean, we need to get into those guys. I think they're really interesting. I mean, Drummond against the Bucks, like against Thon Maker, against Greg Monroe. I mean, should eat pretty hard. And you got Whiteside against Vooch. So, I mean, both really really nice spots.
And you have Gobert. I don't think Gobert's like that far behind them.
No.
Yeah, I think I'm my favorite. I mean, on DK of Jokic, who's only center eligible, so he's my favorite in terms of raw ceiling, obviously. But
sure.
Drummond's kind of the guy that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to. The Bucks are 28th against centers and defensive efficiency over the last 10 games. A lot of Thon Maker. So yeah, I fully expect Drummond to have a big game. So it's kind of a lot of Drummond for me is on that top end, and then I like Marcus Gasol a lot in that matchup as well. So those are two guys. Kind of tournament pivots that I'll definitely have a lot of exposure to.
Yep, very fair. And then you have guys like Frank Kaminsky is eligible on center, but he's like way priced up on DK relative to FanDuel. So our bargain rating is a good thing to just see the difference between that. All right, any other thoughts on the slate, or I guess we can end it there.
No, it'll be interesting, man. Just try to fit all these guys, and I think a lot of it's just I'm going to spend the next couple hours just kind of messing around with lineups and seeing who I can fit in. And it's going to just go a long way towards dictating who you end up cashing.
Yeah, I think for tournaments, kind of makes sense. We have some like really really obvious cash plays today, like 5 or 6 of them even. So I think in tournaments. I think cash won't be that difficult to kind of come to your team, but tournaments, I want to stress, like, get away from these. You got to be contrarian a bit.
I mean, you lock in Dwight on FanDuel, for example. It gets you can get Steph and KD. And then just like kind of fit in some other guys. Like it's giving you like Nerlens and Frank and Barton and kind of you can create a pretty strong team. Yeah, I mean with those guys.
Sounds good. All right. I think we'll end it there. Definitely interesting slate today, just because of that game that just sort of skews everything else. I mean, it's 11-game slate, but we've spent a lot of time talking about the Nuggets Warriors, but for I think justified reasons. It really just skews the whole value of the slate and where you want to go. So will be interesting. Good luck as always. Thank you for listening. We will be off for obviously the rest of this week for All-Star break, but we will be back afterwards. So good luck. Enjoy the break. We'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck, guys.